Craig wants to know what percentage of homeowners would have to default on their mortgage payments before a housing crash would happen like in 2008. Can you see this happening, and if so, how far off?
Well, that's a good question. It's a fair question. Your main residential property crashes came in the 1973, 1974 and 1989. It was more of a blip in 2008 because everything was rescued by artificially low interest rates and they turned the spigot to produce money. Now, the ratio isn't quite as simple as what the interest rate is for the householder and defaults. It's a question, will there be a dry up of credit? Banks are already stopping credit. They're trying to close down their books. They have bad loans. They're trying to consolidate because they know they're insolvent and close down their books. So what you'll find will happen, rather than the interest rates being the problem, although that is part of it, your problem is going to be that banks stop lending. And everybody buys a house on a mortgage. That's the way we've always done things. So you go to any market town, certainly where I live in Yorkshire, the size of these towns has virtually doubled as millions and millions of little boxes pop up all over the place at unbelievable prices, 200, 300, 400,000 pounds, and everybody buys it on a mortgage, 95%. And this is exactly what's happening. Well, when the banks stop doing that, there will be no market for these houses. And that's where you will see, with no market, that's when they will crash. The number of people who can't afford increasing rates on their mortgage will also be another contributing factor. But there's a whole series of factors that are going to crash the next domestic residential property market. And if you think everybody's only all been talked about the ladder, I want to get my kids on the property ladder. It's snakes and ladders, all right? It's snakes and ladders. And the only advantage of being an old geezer like me is I've seen the snakes and I've seen the ladders. And it's there's as many snakes as there are ladders. And a lot of people are going to find out that the hard way in the next year or two.
DMC next. Do you think electronically held share certificates are safe within a brokerage/share dealing account?
That is a question I'm not qualified to answer. I used to like holding share certificates. I have to say, when I had shares, I do. You can see something, can't you, with a share certificate held electronically? You have to sort of put a little bit of a question mark, don't you? There's a question mark over anything that's held electronically in the modern world. It's slightly dodgy, but I don't think there's anything you can do about it. If you hold a stock, it's going to be held. Unless you pay a premium, they might send you a certificate. I mean, I don't know. I don't know enough about it, but I sympathise with the basis for your question. Nicer to have a certificate, isn't it?
Mandans asks, if you could talk about the euro dollar and the chaos a high USD has caused the world, do we see this as happening again? DXY is in a retracement, but to support and back up.
Well, I don't accept the premise of your question. I don't accept that the Yankee dollar is at a high. What you've seen is other currencies tumble against it. You've seen the euro, you've seen the pound, and you've seen yen tumbling against the reserve currency, which is the Yankee dollar. This is a very purely temporary phenomenon, believe me. It's a temporary phenomenon, and you'll find, in fact, as I speak now, in fact, when you wrote the question, you've already seen the dollar come off significantly, and it's going to come up a lot more. They've got the same problems. They have something in the region of 30 trillion pounds worth of debt. The problems that they have, the Fed, warfare, welfare, $1 trillion military budget, 68 billion pounds for the Ukraine, spending money like a drunker on trolley. That the dollar's finito. I'm not quite sure when it's going to lie down, but it could be next year. You'll find that the dollar is just crumbling against any asset of any value.
What are your thoughts on consumption tax on new goods instead of income tax, with central bankers in jail and central banks controlled by the people as opposed to the globalists? Is this possible with a re-evaluation of gold, etc., and an erasure of debt? Would it be possible to start fresh?
Well, yes. It's a good question. I don't believe in central banks. I don't believe in the central banking system at all. All these problems came when we saw the birth of the Fed was in 1913. when the Fed came about. The central banks are always under the political control, and political control will always mean that money and banking and everything is basically, at the end of the day, run by politicians who are all crooked. Can't help themselves. So I wouldn't do it that way. I believe in something which is sometimes referred to by Austrian school economists as free banking. I believe people should be able to choose to save and spend money and buy things in whatever currency that they choose, whatever they like. And give you an example, well, how would that work? That's impossible, that can't work. I tried to explain this once to Andrew Neil, who is not nearly as bright, incidentally, as he likes to think he is. And he didn't understand it because it was talking about what the Scots use as a medium of exchange, as currency. I'm sure that nearly everybody looking at this clip will have at some stage gone through the Middle East, gone through Dubai or Abu Dhabi and stopped and done a stopover on that route and gone in to one of those great glittering shops. They have everything for sale, your booze, your smokes and all the rest of it, and jewellery. It's all there, isn't it? When you go up to the till, they really don't care whether you pay in dollars or sterling or yen or euros. They're not bothered. They've got a machine that can just do that. Boom, 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 boom. What's wrong with that? That's a great system, isn't it? And then you can run your life on the currency you think is the most reliable. It used to be the Swiss franc. It used to be the Swiss franc, but the Swiss franc has got its problems as well since they came off the gold standard. They went from 25% on the gold standard to even less than that now. The Swiss franc is stronger than most, but it's still dodgy, as all paper currencies are. We don't need central banks. We need hard currency, and we need a free market for people to be able to do what they want when it comes to their currency and choose whatever they want. The market. You can't be the market. The market is the protector. The market is the shield of the ordinary working Joe.
Alex is next. Can you talk a little about how you're investing your money and also how you would be investing your money if you were 20 years old and still living at home?
Well, it's inconceivable for me to marry, even though that was all those years ago, 20 years old, for me still to be living at home. I can't think of a more disastrous idea, certainly for me, but obviously works for you because they're all still at home. Savings for a 20-year-old. Well, I tell you what I would advise an old geezer. Don't worry about the savings so much. If you've got a little bit of money left over, buy some half sovereigns or a sovereign or whatever it is and tuck them away in a matchbox under the carpet or something, by all means, and you won't go far wrong. But the best investment you can make at 20 years old is knowledge. Be smart. Don't believe anything you hear on the BBC. Don't believe anything you read in the newspapers. Think, be smart, drill down, be a critical thinker. Do risk analysis. Do all these things that most young people don't do. Do all those things so you get ahead of the game. And there's one thing I think, as any old geezer will tell you, certainly I'll tell you, there's one thing I wish if I was taken back to 20 years old now, I would know then what I know now. And don't worry about saving. Just make sure you think smart, work smart, research smart. And when you're not doing that, have a bloody good time with girls and beer and doing whatever you like and play a bit of rugby. As most of you know, my work is very heavily independently research based. And I get my information from all over the world. It would help if you press the subscribe button and the little bell next to it, because the more subscribers I have, the more likely it is that international independent research institutes will share their material with me. It's most helpful, and then of course I automatically share it with you. So surprise, won't cost you anything. Thank you very much.